I'm Devyani Sahai, and I welcome you all here. This evening promises to be an invigorating, fun time for you all. It's my privilege to introduce my friend Abhishek Singh, an established artist who I've known for a number of years. I've watched him paint with passion and a well-researched approach that adds to the meditative quality in his works. Well recognized as an artist, author, environmentalist, a traveler, and a singer, yes, the list can go on. He's an author to several books, out of which we have a few in stock for you all. And first is the Krishna, then the Namaha, and now we have the Purnam. We take pride in sharing that he has been working with the gallery for a while now. Some of his memorable works include the public art project in Varanasi called Shiva in Varanasi, which he actually went in Varanasi to several ghats and locations, painted over there. It was a perfectly defined public art project. And an interactive live session with JLF for 3 consecutive days, where he shared stories with a huge crowd over there. And everybody kind of just was there, and it was a very enjoyable experience. Another very meaningful art project at the gallery called Vishwadutam, which means message from the trees. This was a perfect setting in front of the banyan tree as a backdrop, and it was a mesmerizing experience. In conversation with Abhishek Singh today, Abhishek, come. We have Anubhav Nath, our gallery director, and I have to add a line, much against Anubhav's. Well, he is the vision behind all these projects, well executed, and people still talk about them. And he continues to inspire all of us at the gallery in his own way, every and each day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Devyani.
Over to you guys.
A big thank you to everyone for being here, because I know we have competition from IPL cricket, and that is something which really takes over a lot of things. So it's a difficult one to compete with. But thank you so much for being here, and thank you, Abhishek, for being here. You're back from the mountains.
Yes.
You have been elusive. So the show happened. We put up the show, and then the artist disappears because he's like he identifies most with a snow leopard, and so the snow leopard was out on a trek in the high altitude mountains.
Yes, they live in very high altitudes, but in the winters they come a little bit down, but it's still difficult to spot them. They don't want to be seen, and if it's only possible if the mountains reveal them to you, and if they themselves choose to reveal themselves. Actually, the sketchbook I was carrying today, this is where I sketched the snow leopards in the mountains on the recent trip to the Himalayas. So let me show one of them and start the conversation by thanking Mother Nature and all its children, and the tree outside, and the guardian of the tree, and everyone else who's part of the gallery, and for the beautiful introduction Devyani gave. Very honored, very beautiful. Thank you. So yes, we can traverse now.
So for coming about the exhibition, so to give a little bit of a backdrop on Abhishek's work with the gallery and work with me specifically, the first project we did together was just like this, which was in 2014 in Varanasi, where we did this public art project called Shiva in Varanasi, which was a lot about the environment and about cleaning the Ganga, and themes like that. Those were the themes we were kind of exploring. So Abhishek is an environmentalist at heart in a very real way. And also I would want to add to that, he is very sensitive to all sentinel beings, and be it an ant, be it a tree, be it dogs, be it anything. He has this special connect with sentinel beings, so to say. And the coming together of this show is very special for us at the gallery. It has taken us 10 years almost to convince him to put up a show. And it was always like, work is being made, there's a lot of commission work that's going on, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of...
Took a few loops.
Yeah,
a few
we were
rounds,
jumping
yeah.
through fire hoops almost to get this show going and to get this show in the gallery. It has been a long journey, and and that is... So today we're also going to be discussing a little bit about how Hymns of Medhini came about, which is the title of the show. And to begin with, I needed an explanation on what he was thinking, because hymns I could understand, but Medhini I could not understand what it meant. And then Hymns of Medhini coming together was something which I really needed explanation on. So we're going to be talking about that.
Yeah.
To begin with, so Abhishek has a very... Abhishek is a storyteller. He's just an artist and a storyteller. And his Instagram page often has some really, really lovely stories that he puts up, like little snippets and small stories and big stories. So there's this one story on this, on one of the works from the exhibition.
I think it's
the first work there, where, so the work is that, and the story goes, and it's just it's a small paraphrase, it's not even really a story. I know who I am, little one spoke. The ancient one said, how boring is that? The little one asked, why? Because you'd miss out on a lifetime of being curious. So the reason I pick up this story is because knowing about Abhishek and his art and what he's been doing, I really feel it's the curiosity which is a big part of your journey. And it has really helped you traverse different realms almost of creativity and subject matter.
Yeah, just first very grateful that intuitive momentum was there, and then probably in some way life gave me a bit of an ability to hear that intuitive momentum and keep going, and then everything, whether be it your family in some way supports you, or the world at large embraces what you're trying to build as you pursue. But I'll go back to the thing you were saying, that I love all sentient beings, and I think I do love Earth. But for me, a moment of realization was also when one day I was creating this painting which had a lot of, I usually create a painting with a lot of elements of nature, and it occurred to me that as much as I love them through the act of creativity, and as much as I love all these animals, be it the tigers, the elephants, or the ants and the birds, through the creative energy, I really don't know much about them. And I really don't know what kind of life they are living in this world. And I don't know what state they are in. It reminded me that when I was a little older, I started to see the tribulations as well of my grandmother's life. I started to see the silent struggles people endure in the name of love, and those things made me think and realize that perhaps there is more to just romanticizing the nature or earth or animals through the creative act. There has to be something more which I still need to learn about. So what I did in that moment, and to be more specific, I had a very acute kind of feeling about this when I was on I think one of the treks in the Himalayas, where I just felt that I just need to go and learn more about these sentient beings I love so much through my creativity, but in a real sense. So I decided to go and just meet them. I did not know really how and exactly what would be the process, how will I meet them. And I just felt like I needed to meet the elephants because I just was dreaming about them. And of course, when you do these paintings, there's an imaginative world you live with, and that imagination starts to become your truth, and that imagination also fuels your self-image. Even if you're not that, you start to think you are this person. You're this person who loves the earth, and you're this person who's compassionate, and you're this person who's noble, and all of those things. But for me, was it being complemented by the rest of my life? Was it being complemented in the way I live my life? So I guess it's the mountains which made me question these things. So in that way, they were great teachers which put me in this spot. So I went and I found a couple of places where I could work with the elephants, and that work included just making food for them, cutting fruits
You
for them.
became an expert at chopping watermelon.
As I keep repeating, exactly, that the real skill I've acquired in the last 6 years is to cut watermelons at a ninja speed.
Right.
And so I can make that soup for the elephants. And I want them to love my soup. And I have learned to keep the creative agenda out of that pursuit and keep this idea that I want to make something creative out of that act of service completely out of the equation altogether. And somehow, as a blessing, it has still entered my work. So I feel it's a very organic, very spontaneous, a kind of a blessing which comes through that end.
Rewinding a little bit, sure. Yes, that is there, and we will get into that. But rewinding a little bit, your previous work, or the work, I want to say about 10, 15 years of work has been around Indian mythology and exploring the gods and goddesses, and also adding your own bits to the whole pantheon in terms of interpreting the stories differently, because you are a storyteller and an avid reader. So, and that is something like, when we put out this show as a gallery, when we put out this show as a project, when we announced it, there was a lot of questions that we got that, the people were expecting a very pantheon-like god and goddess show. Because with Indian mythology being explained and lots of stories around that. And so how is that, like, how did this traverse, how did this shift happen? Not a shift really, but how did you go from that to this? Because also we have two of your books, the Namaha book and Purnam, which have come out in the last 2 years. In fact, Purnam has just come out, which is filled with these stories. So could you tell us a little bit about the shift into this world?
Yes, there is a transition from doing a lot of work on the ancient Indian literature, on the stories of gods and goddesses, but when I'm asked this question, I always, add a few things to it. One is my own, why I was fascinated and enchanted by these stories from a very young age, and that fascination continued because I felt that they were getting me closer to nature, that even if you ask a simple question like why there are so many gods and goddesses, and as a child you see them in different colors and you see them, representing different things. It seems like a periodic table in chemistry where every element has a different color and a symbol, but all together they make this algorithm which is expressing the phenomena in nature. So when you have the energies of the sun or the rays of the sun, those are the Adityas, they'll be yellow. If you have the wind currents, they'll be Maruts. They'll be a little lighter blue. If you have Vasus, they're the ocean currents. So essentially talking about nature in that sense. And it just to communicate those phenomena to a human realm, to human beings, those phenomena have been personified. They have been personified in that matter. And that's why everything which is a spiritual concept, be it Yuj, which becomes yoga, be it alchemy, be it anything else related to spirituality, they talk a great deal about alignment. They talk a great deal about putting things together, and this putting all these other planes and other phenomena together in this synchronistic kind of a cyclic kind of a system. So that's the essence of most of these stories, at least, and my fascination towards it.
So, as Medhini means the ancient earth, right? So, how is the hymns of Medhini, the stories of the ancient earth, how do these relate to your previous work?
So,
and how is it different from your previous work? It's a two-part question.
The previous work, one of the things I have to clarify, like I get asked this question that my work was based on Indian mythology and on gods and goddesses. Actually, for me, the work is based on the 8 philosophical systems which come from the ancient Indian school of thought. The gods and goddesses are just simply personifications of it. But the 8, so our religion, or whatever you want to call it, the spiritual thought schools, have come out of philosophical practices actually, compared to, let's say, the West, where philosophy was a counterculture movement to religion. That there is a quintessential definition of religion, and philosophy, be it of Hegel or Nietzsche or Marx even later on, they are counterculture movements to religious ideas. But in India or in the East, in many ways, the philosophy has given rise to religious systems. So here they are pretty like together, and it's very difficult to separate one from the other in that sense. So my work, at least for me, was exploring these philosophical systems. So in India we have the most famous being yoga, then the other one being Vedantic school of thought, then there is also Mimimsavad, there is also Vaisheshika. So it's the undercurrent of the exploration is the philosophy. On top of that, I think what you get to see is this theater which is built by these iconic gods and goddesses, but they're talking about these deep philosophies. Even if in a famous example like Mahabharata, you're talking about Kama, Artha, Moksha and Dharma. These are the concepts they're talking about, but they're using figures and actors and the dialogue to talk about it. So the setup of a new mythology came only from an intention that there are certain new questions which I wanted to ask. And I felt I wasn't really, I could have asked that through the older stories, but older stories also have this, a collective memory in the masses now, and they've been traveling for a long enough time. So it'll be nice to create a completely new narrative space and then ask
so
that.
I think at this time we can talk a little bit about the Vrikshadutam work, which was actually made at the gallery, the large work over here, which has a lot of references to the regular sentinel beings as sacred, as being sacred. So this work actually was made at the gallery, and I want to say 2015-16, that's when this project happened, that we
even later
we
I
did
think,
the project here.
I think it was right after that Hungary thing.
And so actually, when for us, this work was kind of the starting point for this, for all these stories to come about. That was the starting point, because that's when, for the first time, we really saw your work around other things,
non-humans,
subjects, non-humans, or non-deities.
Non-deities.
So, how's the journey been from there to here? Because that's also been a couple of years in the making.
A surreal answer to that is that in the dreams, all the divinities came and they just told me, well, it's time for us to retreat into the invisibility. Let us become the Nirakar, the etheric ambience, to actually the icons and the iconography of nature and bring them in the front. Because this was always there, it's just the template of the human being was sort of the focal point of some of those depictions. It's just that now the human sentiment is not the focal point, but elements and animals and plants from nature, but they're imbued by the same kind of energy, which is definitely a level of it is sacred, a level of it is to celebrate their ecological magic, also to bring about a certain awareness about their botanical behavior. A lot of those dimensions have kind of come together in this kind of a recent depiction. Because sometimes when you're looking at any kind of especially religious iconography, you're mostly concerned with the themes which are very exclusive to it's exclusive to a human existential exploration, which is self-awareness or self-realization or the pursuit of the soul, or why are we here, and existential problems which human beings are kind of experiencing. But the point
and where do you feel that, do you think through your art there's like a connect or a bridge that kind of gets created, or are you able to, what is the deeper reason for your art or for what you're making?
The deeper reason of any art in essence is that, as an example, you may see yourself as a separate person and the tree being separate. But in art, when you put a man which has trees coming out of them, what you're saying that actually you both are connected, right? And you have created a visual bridge for someone to explore that philosophy or that science. So in a simple way, this is where you see the unification through words, through stories, through pictures. And in an image, when you see a lot of elements which may live a very separate life otherwise in a reality, are sort of unified. So that affects you in a way where you start to maybe introspect about it and contemplate about it. So that's the idea behind, fusing elements also from the human world into the animal world, but they also have this spiritual quality about them, but also bring in the science of why they're so essential to the forest, and bring some of the attributes which is very beautifully, you know, linked to each animal and what their contribution is to the ecological cycles.
You know, so also the titles of all these works are very interesting. It's you know, we have titles like the Nuclei Weaver, Guardians of the 14 Suns, and some words that I find difficult to pronounce also. The phylogenetic tree.
Yeah, the phylogenetic.
The phylogenetic tree. Thank you. The geomagnetic healer. And then we have simple titles like The Rain Within, Guardian of Prakriti. So, you know, there's almost like a strong science element. It almost feels like sci-fi. Like we've had people come in and be like, this feels like so sci-fi.
Yeah.
Like, so what is the involvement, what is the influence of science? Or do you see an influence of science in your work in any way?
The more you go deeper into the self study, the more you realize the cross connections between various disciplines. So, like psychology is not different from chemistry at a deeper level, and chemistry is not very different from the way your biology is or the way your biome is constructed. So, even when you take something, let's say, as popular as, let's say, Tantra, and Tantra is...
That's a fun word.
Yeah, it's a fun word. It has all kinds of connotations to it.
Very various connotations.
But you take Tantra, you take alchemy. Alchemy is, you know, when they make iron into gold, these kind of ideas. Right. But so iron to gold is nothing but alchemy's understanding of your endocrine system. That how when you eat, let's say something like spinach, which has iron in it, and it moves up your body, it reaches your cranium, and it becomes, you know, etheric gold. It becomes, you know, the ideas, or it becomes the thoughts, it becomes the, you know, that consciousness which is, you know, basically animating your being. So same with Tantra. Tantra is Tan meaning to loom, and Tra means a tool, like a tool you're using, like a concept you're using, or a approach or a methodology you're using to align some things. But what are you really aligning? You're aligning the 12 systems of your body. You're aligning, so you are like an instrument. And you have a cardiovascular system, you have a nervous system, you have a skeletal system, you have an endocrine system secreting different kind of chemicals. That's a whole chemistry lab inside of you, which alchemy is talking about, right? So now when you align these things, you have to follow a certain way to live. You have to follow a certain path, so they get aligned over a period of time. So in that path you must have a certain routine. You must observe certain nuances throughout your day. So that's yama and niyama. That's the first yogic phase. Then you move into more and more immersive connection with this particular pursuit of aligning yourself, and you have reached almost a place of dharana, which is, you know, the seventh stage of yoga, where you are in complete immersion. So when all of this is like coming together, this alignment is taking place, and all these ancient sciences are talking about that. So at that level, science is not separate from spirituality, is not separate from psychology, is not separate from the way we live, is not separate from the way we exist on this planet, is not separate from the way we are connected to this planet or to the cosmos. So that, to celebrate that, I've created a narrative space, and the titles of the show kind of contain a little hints into those things. Like phylogenetic trees,
that's
model of the tree.
There.
Science uses that. It's not an actual tree, it's a model of a, which is based on the tree itself, which they use to figure out the origins of life. Right? So in that there is you can read that also as an actual tree, and the tree is fused, the plant world is fused with the animal world, is fused with the human world, is fused with the aquatic world. Right? So all those various worlds are in alignment in that picture, or in across these depictions.
I see a lot of art with indigenous art eyes, because those are the kind of eyes I've developed over the years. But you know, there is a strong resonance that I see with like Gond art, as in we've seen a lot of Gond art together, in fact, at the over here, and otherwise also, where you've mentioned that you do see, you kind of see a certain inspiration from the traditional arts in your work and in your creative process. You know, all over when we see the tiger with the tree, the trees coming out.
And because for them, their existence is not separate from the cycles of nature. So their iconography is very much influenced by that. But that iconography may be blank about certain scientific dimensions of that existence. And being part of a modern world where we have access to, you know, a lot of knowledge and a lot of science and a lot of new age ideas of understanding life and existence and cosmos, we can bring that into that fold of then giving it another boost with this other band of knowledge. But I love the folk arts and the indigenous art because they are connected to the earth. So when the spring is gone, they will draw a flower on the wall, because that flower now which is drawn is, you can reminisce the spring through that. But as the new spring will come, the flower on the wall will wither away. There is a transientness to that art as well. Yeah.
Could we, I would love to do a little bit of a deep dive into some of the works here, because each one has a very interesting story. The characters have names, so I guess this work is easily accessible. Everyone can see it. So could you tell us about the turtles, why they're there? They're, the lotus and the elephant. Is it swimming in water? Is it in space? Which realm is it in?
So Hymns of Medhini is taking place in this mythological universe where the entire earth is a very ancient earth. It's submerged in water, but that's symbolic of being inside the womb. And the central idea there is that the darkness of the womb is very different than the darkness of the world we are in. There are two different darknesses. One darkness of the womb aligns you with your dreaming nature, aligns you with your dreams. It gives you the ability to listen. It makes you move through various species, because in the womb you are becoming from nothing to something, and you're part of that amniotic realm. You're part of that world where all these things are getting integrated in you, right? But the darkness, so it's very nurturing. That darkness is very nurturing. It's very motherly in that sense. It's very, it's part of your evolution. It's part of your, it's part of everything which is positive or probably, necessary for your experience on this planet. But the darkness of the world is very different. And that's the darkness we talk about when we talk about, dark versus light. And when we find ourselves in certain bad spots in our life as we live it, what are the things we are trying to, sort of explore and move towards to heal ourselves or absolve ourselves from? That is probably the act of listening, right?
Which of course is not
difficult,
there in a big way.
In the age
I lack it. So
no, we all lack it. You're being humble about it. We all lack it. And I think in the age of constantly broadcasting your emotions and constantly broadcasting what's going on.
By the way, we are live on Instagram right now.
Yes, that said, it has its good things, but it's just the way of the world becomes so that it's like if you buy a car, you have to find time to walk, you have to assign some time, so you walk now. So it's just that. So the darkness of the world, when it does things to you, it severs you from your dreams. It breaks your sleep. It takes away the ability to listen. It takes away a lot of those things which were happening to you when you were inside the womb in that darkness. So now you have to find those elements back. You have to find those things back. So the world of Medhini at a philosophical existential level is about this, but it's submerged by water everywhere. All our characters are looking inside these oceans for the sleeping suns. They are looking for
sleeping sun.
The sleeping suns.
I think the sun is supposed to wake us up. So what is this about the sleeping sun?
Because this moment where the universe is set, this mythological, mythopoetic universe is set in a moment where new creation will take place. And I think we ourselves find ourselves in a time, in this time and space as people, as a cluster of humanity, that there are possibilities to create a completely new world, for which you may have to wake up different elements in you.
When is the Hymns of Medhini, when is it set, where is it set, like what century or which eon are we talking about?
It's set in this kalpa which I call the Adrashya kalpa, which means that this is a time which was invisible, but somehow is only revealed to you in your dreams or in your visions or in your pursuits where you connect to something very deeply, right? So Hymns of Medhini, in that sense, if you see, they have lotuses coming out of their back. And when anything you have on your back, you usually consider that as burdening, as weight, right? But there is a certain lesson inside that weight. If you open that up, it becomes that light of knowing. It becomes some kind of a moral understanding of the world and how you move forward. Similarly, their hearts are also open, and especially in that picture, if you see more clearly, the turtle has the heart open. That's the anahata, which is the heart chakra, or just the heart is open, and the light of the heart is guiding the little one. So in all the pictures, it's the light of the heart which becomes your guiding light, but you must listen to that light, if that makes any sense.
Heart over mind.
Yes, so that light of the heart is guiding you, but it is not that you're relying on the light to really, clear the path for you. You're listening to that light, so it opens your own heart, right? And it opens your own possibilities of what you can be and what you can become. And then you chart that journey and you go on to that journey. So most of these pictures are, of course, interconnected. As we discussed, we will do a book which has the entire story and the mythology of these characters in it.
So a little bit about the characters, like the turtle and the elephant. I know that they have very cool, very special names and characters, and each one has a characteristic. So
they have the names. Like this elephant is Dhwani, but she's the same child elephant who's here, who learns from the turtle mother, the Kurma mother, and she has a very long name. I'm not going to go into that. I have it on my phone, even I don't remember. Because she has lived for such a long time, she has a long name. And she learns from her, and then here she teaches her children what she's learned from her. So there is this sort of legacy of wisdom getting passed on to different species, but they are the world mothers. They are not like biological mothers alone. They're like the world mothers you're learning from. Similarly, the tiger on which is right behind you,
this one?
Yes, and he's telling, so the little one is asking the tiger, which sun should I wake up? Because there are multiple suns submerged in the water, right? And then the tiger tells her that you should wake up the sun which wants to create, which has an intention to create, right? And then you have to find that intention in yourself. And how do you learn to create? Now she will go and ask the earth how to create, because earth can create without the sun. There are systems like thermal vents inside the earth which do not depend on the sunlight. So earth as a planet also has its own creational phenomena which don't depend on like sunlight at all.
So where do you get all these stories from? Where do you get the inspiration from? What do you smoke? Tell me that.
From the elephants and from in the dreams. Like in the dreams, I think I did share this with you, but in one of the dreams I've had, I had this vision that Earth was a wandering planet, that it was not part of this solar system. It has just wandered on its own like a traveler across different galaxies, and because of that it has collected this life on it. These amazing life forms, if you go deep in the ocean, they have their own bioluminescence, they have their own light. So the darkest places in the earth have creatures with their own light. It's pretty phenomenal. And then in the realm of light, where we have all the light, we are surrounded by this darkness we cannot see. Not just at a poetic level, also at a level of the way we struggle with just the ways of living. But the darker you go, you find these creatures which are, they have their own system to survive. They don't even depend on sunlight, as I said. So all of this made me feel that Earth must have had its own unique journey, because science is also trying to understand the origins of life, origins of this cosmos, planet. This is more speculative of what I'm saying. It's not scientific. But in this dream, I thought that
more creative also.
Creative, yeah. You take your own liberties. That Earth was a wandering planet, and it came to this solar system. But here it got shackled in the orbit, and it cannot go anywhere else. So everyone on this planet has this feeling of being free.
When we're talking about this, to me, it feels like it's about also like the Earth is like the mind in a way. Or this is the creative freedom I'm taking.
No, you're very
because
spot on.
when you talk about the darkness and things coming out of that, and then the shackles, somehow all of that together just made me.
Earth is a mind, absolutely yes. It's a living, breathing entity inside of which we are housed, and we have this little atmosphere around it, which is, you can say, a kind of a little thin etheric veil. Which distills the sunlight, so life can thrive on the outer crust of Earth. In that sense, it's like Anchal in that way, that which keeps you away from the harmful effects of this orb of light, which is the sun. So Earth has so many uniqueness, and it is a living and breathing planet. So in the dream, it was that the Earth is shackled on this planet, and it's the meteoroids which brought, you know, the water to the earth, and that at some point it yearns to leave this galaxy. It yearns to unshackle itself. And I think that could be also seen as this collective yearning in the human realm for mukti and for moksha, this, you know, breaking out of some kind of a, you know, some kind of a thing, some kind of a restriction, some kind of a thing blocking you. So this is just one of the stories from the mythology I've been building. So there are different versions. I allowed myself to go into, one would be very scientific, but like this is very creative and imaginative, but other one would be very geologically true or scientifically true of how the universe was actually created, that kind of thing. So it's a marriage of both.
So you did mention that the possibility or something about a book on the hymns of Medhini. Right now, as we are seeing in like graphic novels are getting very popular, have been very popular for a while and gaining more popularity. Also, I think comes from a place where people are finding themselves not having that much attention span to really read, and you know, so they just, it's easier to flip through a graphic novel. But having said that, there's a lot of really good creative work that happens through this media, through this medium. So I know your Krishna Journey Within was a graphic novel style book, and it did really well in terms of popularity, in terms of sales. I think it sold, it was done by, it was published in the United States by Image Comics in the US, and 20,000 copies sold or something. It's some.
It's all aggregate, all the books together. That was, it's just great that it came out outside.
Right. So it's not about how many copies. So what I mean to say is it's really popular, and in fact, even today, like while we have this exhibition going on at Ojas, you know, we've been getting inquiries about, oh, do you have that Krishna book? And people really recognize it as the first graphic novel that they really read, because it came out in what, 2000 and
I think 12,
right?
12,
So, and there was a lot of work. There was like 6-7 years of work that you put into it, and then of course you've been involved and you've done a lot of books, as in books which have got. They're not really like fine art books in a fine art way, but your stories and your art together. Which I've actually seen that creative process very closely while you've been working on Namaha and Purnam, and that was the excuse you gave me for delaying this show. So, you know, we've seen that process. I've seen that process and observed that process. So how do both these differ? Like, how is it when you go about making, and again, sorry, one more part, another question is, there's, in your work, like this is all work that you've done on paper with color, with paint and pen and pencil and all of that. For your books, there's also, you start with a work, and then there's also a lot of, what do you call that, computer generated digital stuff that goes on to those images to probably enhance the images or make them more printer friendly. So I just want you to kind of address both these things, like graphic novel, not versus, but graphic novel, and how it is to work on a book versus graphic novel, and then also art with now, as we're also seeing the advent of a lot of AI generated art. How does all of that come in relation to your work and your thoughts on the same?
That's many questions in
There
one
is a lot of questions, but
let me break it down to two things. So I will get the essence I'm getting from it is, what is like, will this be a book? Surely this will be a book, because I think it'll be nice to read the story behind the thing and see it in a chronology and really immerse in it. But one other intention, because we talked about digital and immersive technologies, one of the things because of which I did this was to, I think in our world we are glancing through the world, and technologies ruling our senses in a way where we may not have a stronger relationship with our dreaming self. And we may still have a relationship with our cognition and psyche, which will also be eventually get more fragile and will be compromised in certain ways. But we definitely don't have too much of this conscious relationship with the dreaming self. And I would love to create something where if you walk, that you can enter this as a dream. Because I feel that immersion will change something in a person. Imagine if it's a child, for instance, that or even an adult, that they enter a place where they are part of this journey of an ancient earth, where they are navigating and just going to different places along with these characters, asking certain, curious questions. And this is one of the three meta narratives of humanity. There are three large narratives which every culture and civilizations will do because they concern with the human journey. One is the narrative of war, right? Like a light versus dark or good versus bad. There will be one narrative like that. The other is the narrative of love.
Actually, war has been a central theme.
It's
so many.
Our history is
till
replete
today,
with that.
like even now.
Our history is replete with that, and love. So you have love between two people or love towards something. So these are the two meta narratives, and then there is a third one, which is the narrative of the journey. That you just are traveling to maybe the mountains or the sea for the first time. You're taking your first scuba lessons. You're suddenly inside the water, a place you haven't been before. You see a little fish, it excites you there. So I think creating a bit of that experience, and which can enrich your something within, which is, let's call it the dreaming self. That would be an interesting thing to do with this. I'll be excited to do something like that. And that's about it. I think the graphic novel or a book is a more personal experience of the story, and a film is a more collective experience of the story.
With the graphic novel and book, do you see like merits of one over the other?
Not necessarily today. I think today's time is very open. You do what is first accessible, and you do also what can reach more people, hopefully. Like an exhibition like this it may be difficult to come to a physical space to see physical paintings, but it's listening to music live, right? Versus listening to it on a computer. So when you see a painting live, this is actually the music is live in front of you. You start to interact with the piece differently. It's not going to be the same if you see this on Instagram. But this cannot be experienced by multiple and many people in that sense. So it has its own place, I would say that, yeah.
Sure. The whole experience, especially the last 2-3 years, have really changed our ways in thinking about physically being present at places with, the whole advent of COVID and all of that.
Sure,
where online things just overnight became more and more popular. And one got to kind of like accepted it in a more
absolutely
holistic
and
way.
Something like a painting, I say that there are very few things which will move you into a state of silence. One of those things is a window in a train as you're going from one place to another. But also looking at a painting moves you a little bit into silence, not even music, but the act of drawing for sure will move you into that space of silence, because the point you start to draw, you become silent. Now it depends if you want to go.
That's when, because you draw
minutes.
well, that's why you can say
not
that.
even draw well.
Otherwise,
you can close your eyes
people,
and you can
like,
just draw something and you will
not so
become
easy.
silent, and you open your eyes and use it like a GPS. Your eyes are like a take it left, take it right, take it up, take it down, play with it. Have a playful relationship, but for that 5 minutes you will become silent. But when you go into that state, your parasympathetic system, the way your body is corresponding between the physical, psychological and the spiritual plane, that gives you a certain kind of nourishment. The experience of life is happening anyways, but this deepens it. That's the only difference. Yeah.
Right. So what next?
We keep going, we see how far we go with creating this mythological world, and as we have also planned together that we'll do the next chapters of this mythological universe and see how far we can express and stretch it. All good so far.
And from you've done a lot of live art as well. So I just because that being a testimony to one of the projects.
Live,
then the project you did at the Carlos Museum in Atlanta, which was a complete live installation over 7 days, which went all over the city over there. Followed by, of course, the work we did at JLF in Jaipur, and I'm forgetting some along the way. But the Godlahara project, that was also a very interesting project where you got to explore another mythology.
Because I love so many world mythologies that anytime I get a chance to be in a different country, I incorporate their mythological stories with our mythological stories. There's a tribute of friendship as well, and also it's nice, playful. They have a lot of common things.
How is that as a process for you? Just the whole live art, where it's like a performance. It's performance art, right? Because it's there are people there, and we're talking about these large gatherings, and
Yeah.
you're like making all this in front of people.
Yeah, it's
So
it becomes a shared experience. It acquires a kind of a musicality there. I think say the process of art is usually hidden away in the solitude of the artist's studio. Usually, unlike witnessing music or dance, which is where the dancer and the audience and everything is like in that one moment, bonding. With art, it's not that easy. So I think to bring it out there, and as you're creating a picture pretty much straightforward on a piece of canvas, blank canvas, with just a brush, there's not much control Z, not many undos at your disposal, and you're just moving with that flow. I joke about it that this is pursuing art as an extreme sport, if that makes any sense. Right. Like surfing, and a tide may take you, a wave may take you, you try again. But what my intention is not just to show just to show a drawing being unraveled over 5 days. I think for me the fun and the intent is to talk about the themes and the stories behind it, and how that becomes the place where everyone's coming and contributing with their own little observations, little stories, all of those things. So that boost of celebrating that theme and how making a painting kind of evokes that, like in people, because that's the exclusive part. That's really the place where the thrill is, or a sense of service comes, that okay, you're able to talk about clean the oceans like Shiva did the great ocean, those kind of things. Yeah.
Cool. I think this has been very interesting. You still didn't reveal that what you smoke, what substance are you on. With that, I would open it to questions from the audience, and anything that anyone may want to ask. Abhishek is a great storyteller, so would love to get questions.
None of them look directly at you. I'm just curious about that gaze. They're all looking, and there's so much shyness, there's so much coyness, like they're almost deliberately looking away. I just find that interesting. I mean, are you aware of that? Or none of them look at you directly? And I just find that.
Yeah, we aren't that important. That's definitely a statement in the work, surely. I think their eyes are not confronting you. They're not trying to like search for something in you. I want you to move into their psyche. So either they have their eyes closed, or they're looking in certain directions. So this whole thing of like looking in space, that whole idea that you're looking in space, that's an introspective kind of a feel to an entity, whoever that may be. So that's deliberate in it. But there are depictions where they are also like looking at you sometimes, but that may instill a different emotion in a person. Like when I make, for instance, Kali, there are depictions I've shared with Anubhav where she's looking at you, but those could be very strong depending on how you are as an individual. So they are always in the dhyana state of introspection, because I feel that's what I want to instill in a time of absolute like information chaos, in that sense, that you just move into an introspective plane, something like that.
But is it also something to do with confrontationalness of nature with human beings, or not addressing that, or consciously keeping away from that?
It's not,
considering what a mess we've made, as in coming from that.
I think both are fine. I'm not choosing one over the other. I think but the large idea is creating a element of introspection in the painting itself. So even if it's a deity, they are sort of, their gestures, their body gestures and their poses are drawn in a certain way which invokes that in us as well. Because when they're looking at you and they're giving a bit of a blessing, that's another way of portraying them. I think we have a lot of that also, which is also fine, because it puts you into a personal space with them, right? It suddenly personalizes the space, and that connection between you and them, the gaze and the lock of the gaze, all those things. But the point they're moving in space, you kind of move with them. Your psyche also moves with them in that space. Like if they're looking, like for instance, that tiger is looking probably just in space. But the Nandi, the bull in that painting, is really closing his eyes, and that's a very motherly sentiment, which I have noticed as well, that tenderness and the gentleness to embrace all life and protect them at the same time. So there's great strength. fused with this great, like, you know, exuberance of that inner being, which is represented by that pose, at least. Yeah. But it's both. It's like not one better than the other in that sense. You can have someone, a confrontational element to it, also a non-confrontational element, introspective element to it.
But yeah, most of these are definitely in the non-confrontational.
Yeah, because they're journeying, they're going somewhere, you're on a voyage with them, you become part of the team, you know.
Right.
There is no moment, there's no time to waste. You just get onto the bandwagon and you just inside that world, you know.
Right.
Like even civilization, we've always relied on picture stories. We've had hieroglyphs, we've had those story urns. Something more accessible about it. So really thank you for those. On the mythology aspect of it, how long does it, how is the morality of this mythology already clear to you? Or is it something each introspection giving to you? And how much time does translating that epiphany into maybe the turtle mother or even the elephant frolicking in the amniotic fluid? How much time does that take?
Yes. And if you look at other mythological world, Greece, or even you mentioned that the theme of conflict is also recurring along with journey. So is it that you don't see it? I mean, you don't see any conflict, or what is it that, or you're shut to the conflict, or you don't want to portray it? I mean, there's total absence of it. But whereas, you know, I mean, these days we are bombarded with this whole theme of conflict everywhere.
Real world versus real world.
So, real world versus real world.
So, one, that this is a 13-year-long exercise which I've been doing in secret. This is the first time a bit of that work is getting showcased. And the first offering, we wanted to do the Hymns of Medhini chapter, because the harmony and it's juxtaposed to what we are experiencing in our daily lives anyways. That our lives have become such that probably we are finding ourselves, even if we yearn for it, disconnected with nature, or probably not able to reflect on, you know, what is our connection with it, or probably in a simple way, it's boring to interact with a tree beyond 15 minutes, but you can look at reels on your phone for like 3 hours, 4 hours. So it's to bring you into that space of dreaming, build you and invigorate that kind of feeling that you're connected to nature, but keep you there in that space. So so the paintings or the stories are hopefully interesting enough to keep you in that space. But it is not devoid of like the conflict, and it has its own you know, debates and samvads about morality, but they will come in the later chapters. It's very much there. There are civilizations in this world which have different belief systems. So I had to develop those things across those 13 years, that these are different people who believe different things. They defined their life on this planet or in the cosmos quite differently. There are elements of technology, and then there are elements which are closer to nature, and the conflicts between them to begin with.
Yeah, because the whole
There will be.
history is like based on conflict and contradiction. You know, because there's something that comes out of the unison from the contradiction. I mean, some people have ruled.
But what if? You imagine yourself that this is your first day on this planet and you know no history about it. And if you don't tell the child any history of war or anything else, let them just define also the world in their own way. We are starting from that return to innocence kind of a place, but it'll unfurl. But I think so I'm a student of history and a lot of geopolitics and all of those things, because you have to understand the wounds and the trauma it has incurred on various timelines, and the way it has shaped the psyche of people, civilizations, nations, for instance. You have to do that due diligence to understand the effects of, you know, this human-made conflicts based on human-made constructs, be it religion, governments, you know, ideological instruments, for instance. So all of that is there. And I think we are pretty much, as people, we are very, we have become activated at an ideological level. If you see in the last 5 years, we have become quite activated at an ideological level. Hence the reminders, hence your introspection should bring you towards something which is a counterbalancing force. So it's very deliberate that I want to bring you into a place which is innocent, almost that you feel it's too good to be true, but you want to be with them, no? You want to be with the turtle mother, you know. There's a child who is looking at this But more than the child, their parents were like looking at this as well. And it's a shared experience of that innocence, of that connection, a little reflection on that. But conflicts will be there. The conflicts are here as well, but more spiritual and existential.
As the story grows, the conflicts have to come in.
Yeah.
No story without conflict.
But that's a big question for sure, because every big story, let's say, ends in this epic war. And when we look at that as a film, or when we are reading the story, we are romanticizing the war. But when you truly think about it, let's say you take Mahabharata, a very famous example. 5 generations of life gets annihilated, completely destroyed in that war. 5 generations. So you have fathers looking at the sons dying. You have sisters looking at their brothers dying. You have every possible kind of melancholy multiplied 1,000 times happening and unraveling in those 18 days. And it's one of the greatest tragedies. So how do you come around a wound like that? Right? How do you come around a wound like that? But has it been told to us that, so once that story is told to us, will we stop fighting amongst each other? Has that happened? What has been the impact of that story? So when you immerse yourself truly in the story of, let's say, Mahabharata, like the famous thing is, don't keep Mahabharata in your house, otherwise fights will happen. They have these kind of thinking. Fight is happening anyways, whether you keep it or not. But this is a grammar to understand why fight takes place. What is that in you which becomes so obsessed that you'll manifest a war? What is that in you? And what is that in the other person, which has to also, find a counterbalancing force to come and stand by some kind of a thing which he's calling a truth? What is that? This is a very deep contemplation about those things. That's why these stories have remained relevant. But so here we are romanticizing war, but in our daily life we don't want it. We actually don't want it. In Delhi or in some kind of a very comfortable place, we may exercise our anger. But the point you go to Himalayan terrain, at the borders, you go to Northeast, you will feel that there is a sense of mortality in your face. There's a sense of death which can happen, which has happened. You are witnessing it to soldiers, to people guarding your country, guarding their country. It's more real. In that reality, you start to think differently about it, right? So those stories as instruments, as narrative instruments, were built for a reason because of that. So there will be deeper contemplations about this in this mythology too, right, as we move more into it.
So before we close this lovely session, that when you're here in this space, and if we are in conversation, it has to end with a song. So I'm going to put you on the spot over here. Oh. And Abhishek is an accomplished singer.
But with the voice is completely killed.
That's okay. You don't need to be. Oh.
I have to add this lady here, Anubhav, was actually going to tell you this right now, and I was going to
No, thank
I
you.
did it.
I don't even know which one. But before I get to the song, one quick gesture of thanking everyone, first of all, for all of you to come here and enduring the monologue, as I say. And thank you for your patience. Thank you for the love everyone showered.
By calling it a monologue, you've completely undermined me.
No, you were completely glamorous. You are the reason why the endurance happened. Yeah. And thanks to everyone at the gallery. Thank you, Devyani, for such a beautiful, lovely, warm introduction, and all the love you keep showering on us. Thank you so much. It means the world to me and world to us. And Vinita, thank you for handling both phones like a juggler of technology. You're very, very, loved. And thank you, Rodriguez ma'am, right behind. You're the guardian of the whole place. We give you so much love, and thank you for being an umbrella of love to all of us. Auntie, right behind, looking fabulous in yellow. Thank you so much. You bring the energy of the flowers today. You bring the fragrance. Thank you so much. Ramdhani ji, thank you so much. आपके बिना कुछ भी possible नहीं है. So, big round of applause for everyone in the gallery. And Uncle, thank you for always being so encouraging, so loving, so, sending love in your absence and presence, and making sure the journey continues. Thank you so much. Everyone who's not here, Santosh, Raj, everyone in the gallery, lots of love to everyone. Thank you for making this happen. Thank you to all of you. I will excuse myself from the song, but we'll end here let's end with this a nice, maybe.
Huh?
Waiting for the song. Okay. Okay, let me sing this.
Nature.
Something with nature only. जैसे पात गिरे तरुअर के, as the leaves fall from the tree. जैसे पात गिरे तरुअर के, मिलना बहुत दुहेरा, मिलना बहुत दुहेरा. That once the leaves fall off from the branches, it's not fated that they will ever meet again. But the leaf will meet something, it will meet its soil, it will meet its place. मिलना बहुत दुहेरा, उड़ जाएगा हंस अकेला, जग दर्शन का मेला, जग दर्शन का मेला, उड़ जाएगा. That the soul, which is the swan, will leave the carnival of this world one day, like that leaf which left the branch. उड़ जाएगा हंस अकेला, जग दर्शन का मेला, जग दर्शन का मेला.
Thank you so much.